In their first action in the postseason in 6 years, the Arizona Diamondbacks have themselves a win in Game 1. I'm Steve Zensmeister with Alex Weiner joining me from American Family Field, a new name for the ballpark since the last time we faced the Brewers in the postseason. Alex, you were there for Game 1 action. Let's start with the pitching matchup. We knew that Brandon Pfaadt was going to have to go in Game 1 for the Diamondbacks because Zach Gallen, unavailable. He pitched Friday. Merrill Kelly pitched on Saturday. So you get the rookie. Goes 2 2/3. I'm sure that the Diamondbacks ended up going to the bullpen a little sooner than they had hoped, but they got a really strong outing. 6 1/3 solid shutdown innings from the bullpen.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, for me, I guess trying not to call it Miller Park will also always be a challenge over here.
Yeah.
Something about these Diamondbacks playoff games when they don't make the playoffs for a while, they come back their first game. It's always something wild. And this game, it was crazy. It felt like an 8-7 game that ended 6-3. Going with the starting pitching, yeah, with Brandon, he kind of got unfortunate early. Just the leadoff walk really hurt him, and then a bloop single and a grounder through the hole. He eventually strikes out 3 in a row to get out of it and showed some good poise there. Just has an 0-2 mistake in the second inning and gets crushed. And they had a pretty short leash on him. They knew that with Gallen going Game 2 and Kelly going Game 3, that they can kind of extend the bullpen a little bit. This was more than they had hoped for, but they had kind of budgeted for this. And the bullpen did what it has done all month long. It's been a tremendous month for the Diamondbacks relievers. Pretty much since they added Ryan Thompson and Andrew Saalfrank, it has been a really good bullpen because Sewald has kind of settled in, and Ginkel has been a breakout candidate or a breakout player this year. And in tonight's game, Ginkel gives them 2 innings, which was huge. Ryan Thompson gives them 5 outs. So the bullpen did its job to bridge it all the way to Sewald and keep the lead where it was. And they also got pretty fortunate with a couple of huge defensive plays, primarily by Evan Longoria, which we're definitely going to get into in a few minutes. But really positive sign for the bullpen there. It's, they had to use a lot of guys. So that's why they're going to be counting on their top 2 starters to give them some length going forward.
Yeah, they kind of threw the kitchen sink at the Brewers tonight. They threw almost everything they had in the bullpen. Saalfrank didn't make an appearance, but I assume that he'll be a pivotal part of the series at some point. So you throw a lot of your guys. I mean, they had to go to Joe Mantiply very, very early in this game. Miguel Castro pretty early in this game. Ryan Nelson struggled the most, gave up 3 hits, and I think he only got 1 out in this game, but manages
big strikeout though.
Manages to get by unscathed. Yeah. And so for all intents and purposes, this bullpen looked like it did in the month of September. Offensively for the Diamondbacks, most of the damage they did came in a way that I didn't expect, because going into this game, we knew that the Brewers, their catching situation, their starter Contreras throws out 17% of batters over the course of the season. They also have a backup who only threw out 14%. So I thought this team was going to run all over them, but tonight they did it with the long ball instead of their base running.
Yeah. I mean, based on what we saw the last week or so, who could have seen this coming? But I mean, before the game, Torrey talked about this. Tommy Pham, Evan Longoria. I mean, the veterans who have been here and been in the postseason before talked about it. It's just a different environment. So, what they did over the last, couple of games of the season. One part of it translated, which was the hitting with runners in scoring position. But ultimately, the slug that we had not seen from them in a while showed up. And it was their younger guys. It was Corbin Carroll getting them on the board against Corbin Burns in a one swing that kind of turned the tide of the entire game. They were down 3-0 early. Burns looked pretty decent early. And then all of a sudden they were right back in it. And then Ketel hits it back to back. Gabby Moreno gets a high slider and just absolutely crushes it. So to get the 2 guys who are in their first postseason experience to kind of come up big like that and get things going for the offense, that was huge, especially because to get out in front and a day that they didn't execute the best with runners on base until late to get some insurance, just to get out in front and chase Corbin Burns and kind of make it a bullpen versus bullpen game where both teams are fighting each other not to score in miraculous ways. It was exciting to watch, and it was certainly an encouraging sign for this postseason as a whole.
Worth noting that the Brewers bullpen they did a really fine job up until the 9th inning when Devin Williams, arguably the best relief pitcher in baseball, really struggled in Game 1. But worth noting too, you brought up Evan Longoria. It was not a done deal that he was going to play at third base tonight, but Torey Lovullo goes with the veteran third baseman. He's had probably easily the most experience in the playoffs out of all of their players, and the 37-year-old third baseman made a ton of good plays tonight. A double play ball in the fifth inning that gets you out of a huge, scary situation. Bases loaded, one out, and he makes a crazy double play to get out of it unscathed. He makes another diving play that probably saved an extra base hit. He made another play where he bobbled the ball and arguably made a bad play and turned it into throwing out Christian Yelich at second base. So interesting to see Evan Longoria be the one that stood out defensively, a guy that maybe not everyone expected.
We have to talk about that play. Unbelievable. Just, he said he jumped and threw his glove up, and basically it was like, oh my gosh, the ball is in there. I mean, that was a go-ahead single into left field from Tyrone Taylor, who had already hit a 2-run home run off of Fott earlier. And Longoria just speared it. I mean, I couldn't believe it got caught. He couldn't believe it got caught. But yeah, that was arguably the play of the year, just given the stakes. It probably is the play of the year, given the stakes. I know there were some really impressive moments in the outfield from Alek Thomas. And maybe if we put our brains together, we could think of one that may top it. But I think just given the stakes and the toughness of that play, I think that's probably the play of the year. And yeah, you mentioned the other one, comes across the middle of the field, bobbles the ball, back picks Yelich. He's called safe at first, but then they review it and he's called out. I mean, the replay reviews ended up being a huge part of this game too. So yeah, just an unbelievable play that turned the tide potentially of the entire series.
Let's talk Christian Walker for a second, kind of the unsung hero of this lineup. He was, going into the season, was really the only power hitter in this lineup, and tonight he hits the ball that certainly gives them the insurance that they needed late in the game. Really busted that score wide open from 4-3 to then 6-3. With that double off of the center field wall. He must have hit that incredibly hard. I can't imagine the sound that you heard off of the bat in the stadium, but when he hit that ball, I kind of thought, oh, that's probably a line out to center, but that ball made it all the way to the wall. Talk a little bit about Christian Walker, his impact tonight. He had 3 hits and a walk as well. Just a huge offensive performance.
Yeah, that was a frozen rope. I also didn't think it would carry as far as it did, but it was a laser beam. I mean, 112 off the bat, I believe, and it just kept on going and going and going until something stopped it. I'm curious how far it would have gone anyways, but yeah, it was a huge at-bat and a huge moment because, like I mentioned, they were 0 for 8 at that point with runners in scoring position. I mean, they had just continued to struggle to get those insurance runs for the back end of the bullpen, and that was with 2 outs, with 2 strikes. He took a couple of decent pitches from Williams that were out of the zone, and he just crushed it. And that also chased Williams out of the game because Williams was at 31 pitches, and that could potentially have a carryover effect for the rest of the series. Because, like you mentioned, I mean, the guy had like a 1.5 ERA this year as their closer and made the All-Star game. So, Walker had a huge night. A bunch of guys had big nights offensively, but he was the only guy with 3 hits. That was a critical at bat. And at the end of the day, it wasn't the game winner or the go-ahead shot, but to kind of give a little bit of distance on a night when Milwaukee was also creating a bunch of chances. That was critical, and it made the 9th inning go much smoother for Paul Sewell.
Talk a little bit about what's going to happen in Game 2. So tomorrow is Game 2. Zach Gallen going for the Diamondbacks. Have we found out yet who is going to be pitching on the other side for the Milwaukee Brewers?
Yeah, it'll be Freddie Peralta. So figured it would be. It was initially going to be Brandon Woodruff, but he is out for the series with a shoulder issue. He missed much of the season with a shoulder problem. So that's a huge blow for the Brewers because he had been pitching as well as anybody in the major leagues since he got back from injury. He's down. So it goes to Freddie Peralta, who's another capable right-handed starter. He's been very good for them in the second half. He had a terrific August. So it's going to be, another challenge between, is this still, good rotation with a good bullpen that you're going to have to work at bats with. And that's something they did in their Game 1 win. I mean, they worked a lot of these at bats. Some of the walks really set up the offense. So it's kind of be what they're counting on again. And it'll be Gallen, first ever postseason game for Zach Gallen, as hard as that is to believe. And so it's an opportunity to potentially clinch and move it on to the next round. They would play the Los Angeles Dodgers in the NLDS if they can get a win tomorrow or on Thursday. So yeah, Gallen in Game 2. Merrill Kelly in game 3. So yet they won the game that was supposed to be the hardest one to win, which is going up against the Brewers ace with, a rookie starting pitcher. They got that done. Now they have 2 goes at it with their best 2 pitchers. So it's about as good a position as you could ask for.
Yeah, and you could imagine a scenario, not to put the cart before the horse, but if you win game 2 with Zach Gallen, you set up the next series with your second best pitcher pitching game 1, and that would be Merrill Kelly. So that would certainly be a real boost as well. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, one game at a time. So going into game 2 tomorrow, I'll mention something else. So before the game even happened, not that this affected the starting lineup, but something happens with Jake McCarthy where he ends up tweaking something, and it looks like he's going to be out for the rest of the series.
Yeah, it was an oblique strain during batting practice, and they had to take him off the playoff roster. They put Jace Peterson on, so McCarthy is going to be out for this series and the NLDS if they make it to the NLDS, which does impact their ability to have like a pinch runner or defensive replacement in the outfield. We also learned today that Tommy Pham is dealing with turf toe, so it's a couple of injuries out there to kind of limit their depth in the outfield. So it could come into play. It didn't today, but it's definitely an option that's lost for sure.
Give me your parting thoughts on game 1 and heading into game 2 tomorrow. What is there to look forward to? What are you keeping your eye on the most?
I think it's just really encouraging as far as just the plate approaches and what we saw to these D-backs at bats. I mean, I think Lovello said in their series opener against the Astros back on Friday, he saw some anxious at bats, a lot of quick innings. Wasn't the case here. They did a really nice job as far as like kind of forcing, not everybody in the lineup, but most guys in the lineup did a really nice job of kind of seeing the maximum amount of pitches. And I think if that is the approach they continue to take with this pitching staff and they try to get those mistakes and they take advantage of those mistakes, then it's going to be one of the reasons why they win this thing. And obviously Gallen's going to have to do his thing after they used up so many bullpen arms. But so those will be kind of the 2 things I would mostly look at.
Alex, enjoy Milwaukee, my friend. Find yourself a nice bratwurst, and we'll talk tomorrow after game 2, all right?
Sure thing. Yeah, sounds good.
All right, for my friend Alex Weiner out at American Family Field, I'm Steve Zinsmeister. You've been listening to the Ain't No Fang podcast here at Arizona Sports, the local sports leader.